Dispatchers live for details. Caller's name, location, direction of travel. Anything to give us a starting point. That night, all we got was a whisper. "They're in the walls." Then the line went dead. The trace led to a condemned housing project on the bad side of town. Half the units boarded up, the rest burned out, husks tagged with graffiti. Weeds taller than my waist broke through the pavement. My partner and I parked under a busted streetlight. The building loomed like a rotten tooth, windows punched out, curtains fluttering like tongues in the wind. The air smelled of mold, piss, and burnt plastic. "Place smells like a tomb," my partner muttered, pulling his flashlight. We climbed the stairs, our boots crunching on old syringes and broken tiles. The halls echoed in strange ways, every step bouncing back at us like someone was following a pace behind. Then we heard it. Tapping. Not random, not wind. Sharp, deliberate, in threes. Like knuckles on wood. We followed the sound to a door welded shut with a sheet of rusted metal. Behind it, faint muttering. We forced it open. The hinges screamed and the smell hit us, hot wax, mildew, and something sour like rot. The room was almost empty. One chair sat dead center, facing a window where the glass was long gone. Candles had been burned down to stubs along the sill. The floor was littered with melted wax circles, dozens of them. But the ceiling was what made my stomach turn. It was covered, edge to edge, in scrawled phone numbers. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Written in marker, ash, even what looked like blood. Some local. Some long distance. Some half erased. My partner shined his light across them. "Look at this. They're all numbers." He laughed nervously. "What the hell kind of crazy?" Then I froze. One of the numbers was mine. My personal cell. My pocket buzzed. Unknown caller. Against every ounce of training, I answered. The voice was the same as the original 911 call. "They're in the walls." The words echoed not just through the phone, but in the room itself, bouncing faintly from the plaster, like the walls were repeating it back. My partner swore. "That's coming from in here." We backed toward the hall, weapons half raised, calling for backup. But by the time other units arrived, the room was gone. Not literally, but the numbers, the chair, the candles, everything. The ceiling was painted clean white, like it had been sealed for years. No trace of what we saw. No evidence. Later that night, I checked my call log. The incoming number wasn't digits. Just a word, observer. That's what it said where the number should have been. Even now, years later, my phone will buzz at odd hours with "unknown caller." I never answer. But some nights, when the house creaks and the pipes pop, I hear faint tapping in the walls. Sharp. Deliberate. In threes. I've been on night shift long enough to know when something feels wrong before I even pull up. Most welfare checks are routine. Somebody passed out in a parking lot, a broken down car, someone's relative calling in because they can't reach a loved one. But the call about the camper van behind the old strip mall already had my skin crawling, because the caller sounded genuinely afraid. Not annoyed, not angry, afraid. He said the man inside hadn't moved in days, maybe weeks. He thought the guy might be dead. The van was parked crooked in the far corner of the cracked lot, where weeds pushed up through the asphalt. The grocery store it sat behind had been empty for years, windows boarded up, big faded, for lease, sign hanging sideways. The van itself was a depressing sight, once white, now yellowed and streaked with long rust scars. One back window had a square of duct tape over it. The plates were missing, just screws left where they should have been. I parked a little ways off, left my spotlight sweeping across the lot. My boots crunched on broken glass as I walked up. The closer I got, the more it felt like the air around it was heavy. Thick. Like the atmosphere before a storm. I knocked on the side door. Hollow sound, no response. Knocked harder. That's when I heard it, not shuffling, not someone stirring. Scratching. Thin, sharp, deliberate scratching, like fingernails dragging slowly across metal. "Sheriff's office," I called out. "You okay in there? You need help?" Nothing. Against my better judgment, I tried the door handle. It was unlocked. When I pulled it open, the smell hit me like a punch: sour rot, stale gasoline, and underneath it all, something metallic like old blood. Inside was chaos. A stained mattress jammed against the wall, food cans stacked in precarious towers, piles of clothes stiff with grime. But what stopped me cold were the photographs. Dozens of them, taped to every wall, the ceiling, even the inside of the door. Every photo showed the same thing: a green highway exit sign. Always the same number. Sometimes captured in daylight with summer traffic rushing past, sometimes at night with headlights streaking across wet asphalt, sometimes faded like the print had sat in a shoebox for decades. Different angles, different cars, even different states' road markers, but always that one exit sign. I swallowed hard and radioed for EMS. "Possible welfare check, unconscious or unresponsive male, need medical here." My voice didn't sound steady. As I stepped back from the van, twigs snapped behind me. He came out of the bushes barefoot, wild-eyed, hair matted to his forehead, clothes hanging loose from a body that hadn't eaten properly in weeks. His hands trembled like he'd been out in the cold too long. He stopped a few feet from me, breathing hard, and whispered, "Don't let him in my van." My hand went to my holster. Who are you talking about?" He shook his head violently, eyes locked not on me, but on the open door. "Don't let him in." Backup arrived just as he bolted, sprinted into the trees barefoot, crashing through broken glass and weeds like it didn't matter if he cut himself to ribbons. We chased but never caught him. He vanished into the woods like the earth swallowed him. The van was impounded. The evidence team cataloged the photos, bagged the scraps, checked for prints. Nothing. The photos themselves were worse the closer you looked. Some were clearly recent, printed from a Walgreens a few towns over, still glossy. Others were decades old, curling at the edges, printed on paper stock no one's used since the 80s. Different cameras, different film, but always the same exit sign, like he'd been following it across time. When the captain asked for my notes, I kept it simple. "Subject fled scene, unable to locate." I didn't put in what he whispered. Didn't write that I still hear it sometimes when I pass that boarded-up strip mall: "Don't let him in." Night shift patrol is a strange kind of lonely. The world shrinks to a tunnel of headlights and radio chatter, and sometimes it feels like you're driving through a place abandoned decades ago. You get used to that emptiness, and you learn which calls are just noise. Domestic disputes, shoplifters, drunks asleep behind the wheel. 99% of the time, you know what's waiting. But there's that other 1%. The call where your gut starts twisting before you even arrive. It was about 2:30 a.m. when dispatch patched me through to a 24-hour gas station off Highway 41. The clerk sounded rattled. He said a man had been standing at pump number 6 for almost 2 hours. Not moving. Not pumping gas. Just standing. He didn't look homeless, didn't look drunk, didn't even flinch when customers walked by. The clerk thought he might be having a medical emergency, or something worse. I knew the place. That station sat at the county line, and we all joked it was neutral territory for drug runners. I'd busted more than one dealer in that lot. I figured I was about to find some tweaker zoning out. When I pulled in, the place looked dead. One semi parked on the far edge, maybe 2 empty cars near the road. Fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered, casting that harsh green glow that makes everything look sick. And then I saw him. Pump number 6. He looked ordinary. Business casual clothes, pressed slacks, button-down shirt. Hair neatly combed, shoes polished. But he stood perfectly still, facing the pump, his arms limp at his sides. His eyes were wide open and locked straight ahead, not blinking, not shifting. He looked like a mannequin dropped there and forgotten. I pulled up slow, angled my cruiser, and stepped out. The air felt wrong. Heavy, like the humidity before a storm. "Evening, sir," I called, approaching carefully. "You all right?" He didn't respond. Didn't even flicker. I tried again, louder. "Sir, you're on private property. I need you to talk to me." His head turned, just slightly, enough for me to see his lips move. Barely. A whisper. "Car won't let me leave." At first, I thought I misheard. "Excuse me?" "Car," he repeated, a little louder this time. His voice was dry, cracking, like someone who hadn't spoken in weeks. "Car won't let me leave." I shined my flashlight across him, half expecting pupils blown wide, some sign of drugs. But his eyes weren't glassy. They weren't bloodshot. They were steady. Calm. Almost too calm. "What do you mean your car won't let you leave?" I asked. He didn't look at me. Just slowly turned his head toward the black sedan parked beside him. It was spotless. Not a speck of dust, not a single dent or scratch. Like it had just rolled out of a showroom. I circled it. No keys in the ignition. The dash was dark. But the engine was humming, faintly, like a heartbeat. I ran the plates. Dispatch went quiet for a moment, then came back with hesitation in her voice. "Unit 14, those plates are flagged." "For what?" Silence. Then, "Missing person. 6 years ago. Out of state." My skin crawled. I walked back toward the man. "Sir, what's your name?" He blinked for the first time, slowly, like the question had broken whatever trance he was in. His lips trembled. "I told you," he whispered. "It won't let me go." The clerk cracked the door behind me, cigarette dangling from his hand. "He's been like that since midnight," he called. "Didn't move once." I thought he was gonna keel over. Tried talking to him, but he just kept saying that. Over and over. I turned back. The man was staring at me now. And in that moment, I realized what was so wrong about him. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't high. He looked resigned. Like a prisoner who had long ago accepted his sentence. I told him I needed him to step away from the car. He obeyed, but slowly, like his shoes were nailed to the pavement. When he moved, his shadow stretched under the buzzing lights, longer than it should have been. Thin, distorted, reaching. We took him in on a psych hold. EMS said vitals were fine. No drugs in his system, at least nothing they could detect. He just sat in silence, repeating that same phrase to himself. "Car won't let me leave." The sedan was towed. Here's where it gets worse. The next night, I stopped by the station again. Routine patrol. The clerk flagged me down the second he saw my cruiser. His face was pale, his cigarette shaking between his fingers. "He was back," he whispered. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "The guy. Same spot. Same car. Pump number 6. I drove over slow. And there it was. The black sedan, gleaming under the green lights, exactly where it had been. Only this time, no driver. Doors locked. Engine silent. I ran the VIN. Nothing. Not flagged, not missing, not even valid. Like it had never existed in any database. The clerk swore he'd seen the man at exactly 2 a.m., standing with his arms at his sides, staring at nothing. But when he blinked, the lot was empty. Just a car left behind, gleaming, waiting. And me? I don't gas up there anymore. Not because I believe in haunted cars, but because I don't want to look up from the pump and see someone staring back at me with wide, unblinking eyes, whispering in that dry voice. It won't let me leave. I've been on the job for just under 6 years, working night shifts in a suburban county where the biggest excitement is usually a drunk driver trying to talk his way out of a ticket. We don't get the kind of blood-soaked chaos you see on shows like Cops or in Hollywood thrillers. It's more routine: drunks, noise complaints, the occasional bar fight. But every once in a while, something drops into your lap that doesn't fit inside training manuals. And those are the calls, or in this case, the stops, that stick with you forever. It started like any other Friday night. I pulled over a sedan drifting across the line twice in under a mile. Standard DUI behavior. The driver was a white male, mid-30s, wearing a business shirt open at the collar, like he had just come from a late dinner. His eyes were watery, but his demeanor was calm. Polite, even. He didn't argue when I asked him to step out, didn't fight the field sobriety test. When I cuffed him, he even chuckled and said, "Guess I deserve this one." That should have been the end of it. The transport back to county was maybe 15 minutes. Standard procedure: suspect in the rear cage, me up front, dash cam and rear cam running. Halfway into the drive, I heard him muttering. At first I thought he was praying, but then the words sharpened into something else. "Tell him to stop breathing on me," he said. I glanced up into the rearview mirror. He was staring sideways at the empty seat beside him, pressed against the cage glass like he was trying to get away from something. "Who?" I asked, steady voice. "There's no one back there with you." He shook his head hard. "Don't lie. He keeps leaning close. I can feel the air on my neck." It was the kind of line that makes your stomach dip. You deal with hallucinations sometimes, meth, sleep deprivation, even schizophrenia. But this guy had been steady and cooperative all night. Now his voice had a note of panic, and panic in a confined cruiser cage spreads fast. I tried to calm him down. "No one's there. Just you and me, and we'll be at county in 10 minutes. He didn't look convinced. His gaze stayed locked on that empty space. The strange part came a minute later when my radio squawked. "Unit 9, you've got a rear seat sensor tripping." I froze. My cruiser didn't have a rear seat sensor. Those are newer models, and mine was 3 years out of date. I thumbed the mic. "Dispatch, clarify. This unit isn't equipped with a rear sensor." Static. Then, "Copy. Must be a glitch." But the suspect started laughing quietly, the way you laugh when you're cornered. "See? They know he's there too." That was the moment unease curled cold in my gut. I kept driving. At the next stoplight, I risked a glance into the mirror again. The glass between us had fogged on both sides. That's normal for me. It was a damp night, but there was a second patch directly opposite his mouth, pulsing in and out as if someone invisible were exhaling. I didn't say anything. Just kept my hands white-knuckled on the wheel and reminded myself, paranoia is contagious. When we got to county, booking was routine. He was processed without incident, though he kept glancing at the hallway behind me. As the detention officer signed him in, the man leaned forward suddenly, eyes wide, and whispered, "He stayed in the car." I brushed it off. Too many hours awake, too many calls with people whose grip on reality wasn't strong. I went back to the lot, sat in the driver's seat, and exhaled relief. That's when I noticed the plexiglass. 5 fresh smears ran downward from the top edge of the divider, like someone had pressed wet fingers against it and dragged them down. I hadn't touched that divider. neither had the suspect. The logical explanation was that it was condensation, but when I pressed my glove against it, my print came out crystal clear, no smearing. And those streaks weren't 5 fingers. They ended with only 4. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed the rear cage cam footage on the station computer. 90% of it was normal, suspect shifting, glancing sideways, muttering. But at the 12-minute mark, right after he said, "Tell him to stop breathing on me," the screen flickered. Just one frame, but enough. A shadow shape leaned forward in the seat beside him, head tilting toward his ear. Then gone. You could dismiss that as glitch compression if you wanted to. I tried. God knows I tried. But 2 days later, I picked up my cruiser from the lot and noticed my rearview mirror tilted low, as if someone 6 inches shorter than me had been driving. I never adjust it. I don't need to. I mentioned it casually to a fellow officer over coffee, half joking, half not. He gave me a long look and said, "You ever read Jung, the psychologist?" "Not really," I said. "He wrote once that what we repress doesn't disappear. It sits in the back seat waiting for you to look." That line rattled me harder than the smear prints. Because that's exactly what it felt like, something waiting. 3 weeks passed. I managed to bury it, convince myself it was one weird stop and a faulty camera frame. Then came the night it came back. Routine patrol. 2 in the morning. I just cleared a noise complaint when I slid behind the wheel and adjusted my belt. The dash screen flickered awake. Bodycam sync error, it read. Then the rear cam feed popped open by itself. I never asked for it, never touched the controls. The feed showed the backseat. Empty. Then not. For a half-second frame, there I was, sitting in the back seat, facing forward, hands folded neatly in my lap. My own face, pale and dead-eyed, staring at the back of my own head. I killed the ignition so hard my wrist cracked. The feed went black. I sat in the silence, listening to the tick of cooling metal, trying to remind myself of Marcus Aurelius' line, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." That worked for the Romans. It didn't work for me. The climax came a month later. Another DUI, almost carbon copy of the first, 30-something male, late night, polite. He climbed into the back without complaint. Halfway to county he leaned forward, eyes wide in the mirror, and said, "He's back there again." I said, "Who?" "You," he whispered. At that exact second, the cruiser lurched like someone kicked the bumper from inside. My headlights flickered. The radio died. For 5 terrifying seconds we rolled in silence, the engine dead, only the sound of tires on asphalt. When the engine coughed back alive, the suspect was curled sideways, face pressed against the divider glass, breathing like he'd sprinted miles. "He smiled at me," he gasped. "It was your face, but wrong." I floored it to county, dumped the paperwork, and left my cruiser running in the lot for hours because I couldn't bring myself to sit in it alone again. I've never written this up in a report. There's no box for it, no statute, no crime to log. Just the feeling of being followed by yourself, or by something wearing your face. Maybe Jung was right. Maybe the backseat is where we hide the parts of us that don't fit behind the badge. But I'll tell you this, to this day, when I slide behind the wheel and check my mirror, I never look long enough to see what's sitting in the other seat. Rest stops at night are strange places. You'd think they'd be quiet, but they aren't. Trucks idle forever, insects swarm the lights, and there's always that uneasy sense you're in a place that doesn't belong to anyone. Every cop who works nights eventually gets called out to check a suspicious vehicle parked too long. Usually, it's nothing. A tired driver catching sleep. A couple fighting. sometimes an overdose. But this one wasn't like the others. It was just after 3 a.m. when dispatch sent me to check a compact sedan parked in a corner of the county rest area. Caller said the same car had been sitting in the lot since daylight, hadn't moved once. Curtains drawn, no activity. Caller thought someone might be dead inside. When I pulled in, the place was nearly deserted. A single semi parked way off, engine rumbling, driver nowhere in sight. The sedan was tucked into the farthest spot, half hidden under a broken light. My headlights swept over it and caught the reflection of toys piled in the back seat. I walked up slow, hand brushing my holster. The windows were fogged, but not from heat. It was cold out, maybe 40 degrees. The fog was thick, like whoever was inside had been breathing hard for hours. I knocked gently on the glass. Sheriff's office. You okay in there? Nothing. I knocked again, louder. That's when the woman bolted upright in the driver's seat. She must have been lying back so low I couldn't see her before. She jerked forward, eyes wide, hair plastered to her forehead. She looked at me like I'd caught her committing a crime. You okay, ma'am? I asked. Her voice cracked when she answered. I'm fine. Please, don't make me leave. I frowned. Not making you leave. Just making sure you're all right. How long have you been here? She avoided my eyes, glancing into the woods that pressed close behind the lot. Since last night. I only stop at night. It's safer. Safer? I repeated. From what? That's when she whispered. So they can't see me. My stomach dropped. Who? The ones who stand by the trees. Her hand trembled on the wheel. In the weak glow of my flashlight, I saw more detail in the back seat. Children's toys, a stuffed rabbit, a little red truck, a car seat buckled in. But no children. Where are your kids? I asked carefully. She didn't answer. Just shook her head violently, lips pressed together, eyes darting between me and the tree-line. I raised my light and scanned the woods. For a moment, I thought it was nothing. Just branches, shadows, brush. But then I noticed the ground. The dirt along the tree line was churned up, patterned. I walked closer. My boots sank into fresh impressions. Footprints. Dozens of them. Barefoot. Different sizes. Some large, some small, all circling the car like a ritual. The woman pressed her forehead to the steering wheel. You don't understand, she muttered. They come when it's dark. They always come when it's dark. I radioed dispatch, asked for backup, though I wasn't even sure what I'd tell them. Suspicious vehicle? Distressed driver? Unknown persons in the woods? None of it felt right. The air grew still. Too still. The truck engine idled across the lot, but the rest of the world seemed to hold its breath. Ma'am, I need you to step out of the car, I said, keeping my voice calm. She shook her head. If I get out, they'll see me. I heard it then. A sound from the trees. Not an animal. Not the wind. Soft, deliberate, like someone exhaling in unison. I swept my light back across the tree-line, hard hammering. The woods looked empty. But every instinct in my body screamed they weren't. When backup finally rolled in, lights flashing, the woman jolted like she'd been shocked. She scrambled out of the car, clutching the stuffed rabbit from the back seat like it was her last lifeline. By the time we checked the woods, the prints were still there, dozens of barefoot impressions circling tight around the car. But no bodies, no movement, nothing but silence. We took her to the hospital for evaluation. She refused to give her name, refused to answer any questions except one. As I was walking out of the room, she looked straight at me and whispered, "Don't park near trees. Ever. They'll know you stopped."